All right, so have you ever, like, I don't know, just imagine diving into a pool of gold coins, like Scrooge McDuck style.
Well, today we are diving into a story about a king who pretty much lived that dream.
We're talking King Solomon, right?
Yeah.
Famous for being crazy rich. But hold on, because this deep dive, it's about way more than just, bling.
Oh, yeah, this isn't just some ancient wealth flaunting story. This is King Solomon, and his story has layers wisdom, power, and yeah, a good dose of cautionary tale in there, too.
Perfect. Love a good cautionary tale. So we're cracking open the Bible for this one, folks. Specifically, the book of First Kings, chapters 10 through 12. We're going to unpack how Solomon's extravagant wealth, let's call it, played into, well, everything, really.
It's really a story for everyone. It reminds us that even with all the riches and smarts in the world, it's easy to lose your way. And Solomon, wise as he was definitely human.
All right, so set the scene for us.
Okay, so imagine this. It's ancient times, word of mouth is everything, and the word about King Solomon spreading like wildfire. Not just about his wealth, but about his wisdom.
People were like, have you heard this guy Solomon? He's got all the answers.
And that reputation, it reached the ears of, well, someone you don't want to mess with, Queen of Sheba.
Oh, yeah, she wasn't just some random ruler, was she? The Queen of Sheba. This was a woman with power.
Yeah.
And she's not one to be easily impressed.
No, she's heard the rumors, heard about this Solomon and his legendary wisdom, and so she travels all the way to Jerusalem, basically, to see if he's the real deal.
Talk about a power move.
Right, and she doesn't show up empty-handed. I mean, this is a queen. We're talking a grand entrance caravans laden with spices, precious stones, and get this, a massive amount of gold.
How much are we talking here? Like a couple of gold bars?
Try 120 talents of gold. To put that into perspective, that's like, I don't know, 4.5 tons of gold, maybe more.
Okay, so she clearly knows how to make an entrance.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
But here's the thing. She wasn't just trying to outshine Solomon. Chapter 10 tells us she's there to test him, challenge him with riddles and questions that had stumped even the wisest scholars.
A true meeting of the minds. So, did Solomon pass the test? Was he everything she expected?
Let's just say the Queen of Sheba was blown away, like completely taken aback. 1 Kings 10.4 and 5 describe how she was overwhelmed. And not just by the gold and jewels, okay?
That was more.
Absolutely. She was impressed by the splendor of his court, the whole organization of his kingdom, even how his servants were dressed.
Wow, talk about attention to detail.
Right. And what really struck her, what captivated her, was Solomon's wisdom and the knowledge of his advisors.
So it was like she walked into the ultimate brain trust. In chapter 10, verse 8, she even comments on how impressed she was with the people Solomon surrounded himself with.
Like, can you imagine overhearing those conversations, the wisdom in those rooms? It gives you a glimpse into how Solomon operated. He wasn't just born into wealth and power. He cultivated knowledge.
He created an environment where intelligence thrived.
Exactly. But here's the thing about Solomon, and I think this is what makes his story so fascinating. He was human. And as we're going to see, even with all his wisdom, his humanity, well, it led him down some pretty interesting paths.
Okay, so the Queen of Sheba, she's seen it all, right? Solomon's wealth, his wisdom, his impeccable taste in, well, everything. It's a high point in the story, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, talk about a glowing endorsement. She leaves convinced that the rumors were true. Solomon is the real deal. But, and this is where things get even more interesting, the story doesn't end there.
Because, as they say, every coin has two sides. The Book of Kings, well, it doesn't just show us the shiny side of Solomon's reign.
Not at all. As we move through chapters 10 and 11, we start to see a shift. Solomon's wealth, which was, remember, seen as a sign of God's blessing, it starts to, well, multiply, like a lot.
We're talking 666 talents of gold every single year.
Yeah.
I tried doing the math on that, and let's just say it's more money than most of us will see in a lifetime.
Oh, way more. And you have to remember, this wasn't like today with stocks and investments and whatnot. This was pure, tangible wealth, gold, silver, precious stones, the works.
It was so much silver, in fact, that 1 Kings 10.21 says it was like rocks in Jerusalem, just everywhere.
Can you imagine that? Tripping over nuggets of silver on your way to market? It really gives you a sense of the almost absurd excess we're talking about.
Okay, but I have to ask, how does this even happen? I get that he's a king, but this kind of wealth, it seems almost, I don't know, unbelievable.
Well, it's important to remember the context, right? We're talking about a text written within a very specific religious framework. And in that framework, wealth, especially wealth, believed to be a gift from God. It's not necessarily a good thing in and of itself.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So how does all this wealth become a problem for Solomon?
Well, let's look at what happens next. 1 Kings 10.26, and into chapter 11 tells us Solomon starts accumulating a lot of, well, two things in particular, wives and horses.
Okay, lots of wives, sure. Powerful king, maybe it's so good at monogamy, I get it. But horses, why are horses such a big deal?
Ah, good question. See, in ancient Israel, horses weren't just for, like, leisurely rides. They were primarily used for warfare. They represented military might. And the Israelites, they were specifically warned against putting their trust in military power over, their faith in God.
So Solomon amassing all these horses, it's like sending a message, and not a subtle one.
Exactly. He's shifting his focus, moving away from the divine towards something much more, let's say, earthly. And that shift, well, let's just say it doesn't go unnoticed.
It's like the guy who wins the lottery and forgets about all his friends. Except this is, a king, and the stakes are way higher.
Way higher. And that's where the real drama starts, because Solomon, this guy known for his incredible wisdom, he starts making choices that, well, don't seem very wise at all.
So we left off with Solomon kind of going down a different path than we might expect, right? I mean, accumulating all this wealth, all these horses. It begs the question, does he ever realize, hey, maybe this isn't the best look for me?
Well, that's the thing about choices, isn't it? Sometimes we don't see where they lead until we're, well, already there. And in Solomon's case, 1 Kings chapter 11, it doesn't pull any punches. Things get complicated.
Because of the wives.
Yeah.
All those wives he decided to accumulate.
Exactly. Remember, these weren't just, wives. They came from different backgrounds, different cultures, and most importantly, different faiths. And as Solomon's heart, let's just say, drifted from his own faith, he became more susceptible to their influence.
It's like the more he acquired, the more his focus shifted. He went from seeking wisdom to, well, trying to please a whole lot of people.
And 1 Kings 11.4, it really lays it out there. It says, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, that as Solomon got older, his wives, they turned his heart away from his God. His heart wasn't fully in it anymore.
That's a powerful image. The king known for wisdom, allowing himself to be swayed by, well, let's be honest, distractions.
Right. And the consequences, they weren't exactly subtle. 1 Kings 11.9 to 13, it describes God's anger, his disappointment with Solomon's choices, and let's just say there were repercussions.
Oh, so it wasn't just a slap on the wrist. What happened?
Well, God allowed adversaries to rise up against Solomon. And not just from outside the kingdom, but from within as well.
So not only were there external threats,
Right.
but internal strife too.
Yeah.
Solomon's kingdom, this once great and prosperous place, it just started to crumble.
Exactly. And perhaps the most tragic consequence of all. The kingdom, which had been united under Solomon's rule, it ended up divided after his death. The seeds of discord that he had sown, they eventually led to years of conflict and instability.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway here? What can we learn from Solomon's story, even thousands of years later?
I think it's a reminder, a powerful one, that none of us are immune to the allure of power, of wealth, of even, the desire for love and companionship. But those things, they can't be our only compass.
It's like that saying, money can't buy happiness. Except in this case, it's more like money and power and even love, they can't buy wisdom.
Exactly. And sometimes they can even lead us astray from the values and principles that truly matter.
It's a story that's as relevant today as it was back then. So listeners, we'll leave you with this thought. In a world obsessed with acquiring more, what will you choose to prioritize? What truly matters in the grand scheme of things? That's something to think about.
It really is. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how much we accumulate, but how we live and what we leave behind.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the life of King Solomon, a ruler who reminds us that even the wisest among us are human, capable of both great triumphs and, well, some pretty big missteps along the way. Join us next time as we continue to explore these fascinating stories from history, uncovering the lessons, the warnings, and the enduring wisdom they offer. Until then, keep seeking knowledge, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep those deep dives going.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.